Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Shawn Tierney from Insights in Automation, and today we're talking ET200 SP Distributed I/O from Siemens. Before we go any farther, I do want to thank Siemens for sending in the samples and for sponsoring this episode, so it will be ad-free, and that's as far as it goes. Everything else is my own opinion and thoughts, and although I do appreciate them making this ad-free and sending in the samples, because I want to be able to show them to you if I didn't have them. And this is one of the reasons I'm doing this is I just put these hands-on demos together for my students who come out to the automation school for hands-on training. So I wanted to have something they could bring to their station and program with an S7 1200 or 1500. And so I'm creating a bunch of these, and you'll see more and more of these as the weeks go on. But in any case, we previously covered a couple on IFM, but now I'm doing the ET200 SP. So we'll take a closer look at the hardware in a little bit. But before we get into the hardware, I did want to run through some slides that do a great job of explaining what ET200 SPIO is. And again, I call it distributed I/O, not remote I/O, because here in America, most of us know there is a remote I/O product from Rockwell Automation that is trademarked Rockwell. So we don't want to confuse people by using the term remote I/O when possible. So let's go ahead and go to the slide deck now. And the first slide is, and again, this is a couple 3-year-old slide deck from Siemens that we're going to be going through. And, the first thing is, hey, ET200 SP and ET200 MP I/O are IP20, in-cabinet I/O. They're not on-machine or machine mount I/O. And of course, the ET200 MP is the full-size I/O. It's about the same size as the 1500. Whereas the SP is the smaller, like the slice I/O you see from all the different vendors. As a matter of fact, a couple of big vendors are coming out with new I/O this fall, or have already come out with it, and we'll be covering those as well in the coming weeks. But today we're focusing on ET200 SP, and so I wanted to talk about, this is a marketing slide that Siemens puts in their presentations, and it makes sense. All the vendors want to have I/O for all the different applications, and Siemens is no different. And actually, they got some stuff that other vendors don't have. But I'm going to go right beyond this one and jump right into, the main selling points of this product line, where it's compact, it's fast, it's energy efficient, it's easy to wire, and I can attest to that, having done 300-400 wires here. It was very easy to wire. I really liked it. They say it has a great environmental coverage. There actually is some extreme modules. We'll talk about that towards the end. And then built-in diagnostics. Again, depending if you buy the high function and standard or basic modules, right? Will depend on what kind of diagnostics you get. In any case, here is what it looks like. Now, the coloring of this slide, I think the picture's colors, the gray is a little lighter. It's almost like a light green. It's darker in person, as we saw. Let me switch over here. As you can see here. So I don't know what's going on with that, but one of the things you do see on this slide is one of the first things you'll notice is a fail-safe modules, so safety modules. So yes, you can mix standard and fail-safe modules in the same rack or same lineup. The other thing you notice is it's compact, like most of the slice I/O that's out there. Energy efficient, ruggedness, there is an extreme version of this available. Intelligent, you can get high functionality modules, right? Push-in terminals, which I really liked, very easy to use, tool-free connections. Of course, if you put a wire in the wrong place, which happened to me once or twice out of 400 wires, you can use a screwdriver and get it out really quick. And then reduced parts of variance. So that's their marketing on this product line. But I also want to call to attention all the different ways you can actually mark up the products. You can put labels in the front, right in the front of the module itself. You can put labels on top and on the back as well. So a lot of different labeling options. There's also a color coding you can put over the terminals as well. We'll see that a little bit later. In any case, this is physically how it goes together. So first of all, they don't all just slide together like tongue and groove. You do have to put them on the DIN rail and then slide them into each other from right to left. So keep that in mind. Okay. And we always start, the leftmost part is what we call an interface module. And so think of that, if you're a Rockwell guy, that's your adapter, okay? Now the interface module, most of these take a bus adapter. In other words, you can choose copper or you can choose fiber, or you can choose copper and fiber. And I love this design because, while I'm sure it adds a little cost to the product, being able to swap out copper for fiber if you need to, or do one copper, one fiber if you need to, I think it's a great idea. And that kind of flexibility is great. Now there is a low-cost interface module that has that bus adapter built in, But in any case, most of them, as you'll see, what I'll show you here on the workbench, it's modular. You choose the one you want, and there's basic and advanced, and we'll take a look at all those. Then you have the bases and the I/O modules, and we'll look at this in real time here on the workbench in a moment, but you can see here the bases are what the I/O modules plug into. If you look there on the fourth item there is just a base module without the I/O, and that's what clips onto the DIN rail and slides together, and then we stick our I/O modules in. I'll also show you the keying. A lot of people leave that out, but I think it's pretty cool what they do there. And at the very end, they have something called a server module. The name for this, I'm thinking a server is like a computer server. So I don't know what happened with the translation there, but it's like an end cap. If you're a Rockwell person, it's like an end cap. You got to have that at the end. It doesn't really serve up anything, but in any case, you got to have it. So in any case, there you can see kind of how it's laid out there. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide here. And these are all the different type of interface modules they have. So the very basic one, right, if you needed a low-cost drop of I/O, it only does up to 12 modules, but, it's an all-in-one unit with 2 Ethernet ports built in, and you can use all the modules with it except for safety modules. Okay, so that's important to know. Then we have the standard interface modules, which do up to 32 modules, right? You can use safety with them. You can actually expand them to ET200AL if you needed to have some on-machine products or machine mount I/O. I'll show you the AL in a future video. We're going to cover that separately. And you can hot swap any single module at a time, which is very cool. And then, of course, if we go to the high featured, we get up to 64 modules. You can multi-hot swap multiple modules. You can actually set it for asynchronous mode, so you can get the speeds up to 250 microseconds. So it's very cool there. And you can see the other options there, including the CPU, which we will cover. That'll probably be next week, though. All right, so one of the cool features they have is, this was new at the time of this, 2-3 years ago, of this presentation, is they added a unit that actually could use 3 Ethernet ports. So why would you do that? Well, think of it, right? Maybe you're daisy chaining from one interface module to the next, and you have a station where you either need a bulkhead connector so you can program from, or you have an HMI. You need that third connection, right? And so this allows you to have 3 connections. Now, the downside of this is you actually have 4 connections, but you can only use 3. And I'll show you what I mean here. Let's go back to the overhead. And I actually have that module right here. Thank you, Siemens, for sending them in. And you can see I have my 2 bus adapters, but I can only use 3 of the 4. Okay. So it's just a limitation. And I don't really know why they limited it to that. I'm sure there's a reason. I was thinking about that earlier. It's like maybe they wanted to prevent this or that or the other thing. But in any case, it's still cool. It's so much cheaper than buying a switch and putting it in that place. Well, in most cases it would be, right? There's also the optional grooves here. Let me switch back. There's also optional grooves here. I don't know if you can see them very well. We'll zoom in later. But that is for strain relief, if you need to have that as well. You can see those plastic pieces go in, and then you can, zip tie your cables right to them. So very interesting new product there. And then these are all of the different bus adapters. So you can see there's basic ones with 2 RJ45 ports, 2 fast connect ports. There's units with 1 RJ45, 1 fiber optic, and so on. So lots of different options there to choose from. And again, not a lot of people do this. You have to replace the whole interface module with other companies' products, like in Rockwell would be an adapter, to get a difference, right? And here you don't have to. You just replace the bus adapter. Okay. Now here's just showing the different type of modules. So if you're familiar with Siemens, all their modules most of their modules come in different flavors. You have the standard, you have the basic, and you have the high featured, right? And they're also showing a safety module there with the yellow. And then you can also get high speed. So lots of different options here. And we'll take a look at that. But they all have different article numbers or part numbers for us Americans. And so, if you're an OEM, you're just doing a lot of clickety-clack. Maybe you get all the basics. If you're in process, you're probably going to want the high features, advanced diagnostics, and so on. So in any case, and this is what the front of them looks like. Of course, they have digital in and digital out. They have analog in and analog out. They also have what I call specialty. So they have technology modules and communication modules. I love that they have BACnet and IO-Link and Profibus, Aussie in this form factor, as well as conning modules, position modules, energy management, weighing modules, all those different modules. And here's some of the other things too. So tool-free, I did all 300 or 400 wires. It was all tool-free. I just put my wire in, boom, and it clamped it really good. Of course, you pull test every single one, right? And so I've been one of the guys who've driven hours and hours to find out the problem wasn't with the product. It was with the guy who wired it. He didn't screw them down tight enough. So you pull test everyone, make sure they're in there solidly. And I didn't have any problems at all. Very easy to take out. I had a couple that I forgot to run them through the Panduit. I just looped over the Panduit and over the top of the box. And I'm like, Shawn, if you put it in that way, you won't be able to close the cover. So when you're doing so many, sometimes you get distracted. So in any case, very easy to get them back out if you put them in the wrong and you need to rewire them somewhere else. They say they're 50% narrower. I would say that versus the ET200MP, I think they're about the same size as everybody else's Slice IO, very close. And then you can see there the marking at the bottom, those reference identification labels, those are pretty cool if you need to color code the wire terminals. Okay, so let's go on from there. And this one is really cool too. Now, this is a fairly new, not everybody knows about this, but this is the multi-field bus version of the interface module. I think this is so cool. It does Ethernet IP, it does Modbus TCP, and it does Profinet all in one module. It does set up a little differently. When I was testing it out, I was like, wow, that does set up a little differently than the other interface modules. But I didn't have to use the separate tool to get it working. So in any case, very cool, and it can talk all three at the same time. So if you had a couple of people who needed to listen to the traffic, but you needed one station to control it, then you could have all three running at the same time. I just think that's so cool. And we do have one here. We're going to use it first with the Siemens, and then maybe use it with the Rockwell if time permits. But definitely want to do that in another episode of the show. But very cool. Matter of fact, we just did an episode. It's not released yet, but it will be out shortly with the Metla Toledo IND 360, and that also supports multiple protocols. So cool. I love it when vendors do that, all in the same part number. So cool. And so you can see more information about that here. I'm not going to go into details. We'll talk about it later when we actually have the episode on that. Then another thing I noticed with their high function modules, it says firmware 4.1 and up, is that you can, so on the HF modules, you could do module-to-module communications. So you're talking like screw-to-screw, like 250 microseconds. I think that's so cool. That's something else, if time permits, in the coming days, we'll do a demo on that too, if we can get, if we have the time to do it. I just think it's a cool feature. I'd love to see it in action. There's other things in here about other types of modules. I'm not going to go through all this. This one I thought was pretty interesting. It's 24 to 48 volts AC or 48 volt DC. So 8 inputs, either AC or DC in those ranges, and it has a built-in fuse, which I think is so important, right? So an interesting new module that does both AC and DC, right? Looked like it was really designed for transportation. And that kind of wraps up the PowerPoint slide. And again, this is just one of many of their lines. Oh, I did want to mention this. This should have been before that. This is the extreme version of what they call their Side Plus Extreme, where you get the minus 40 to 70 degrees C. You can install it up to 5,000 meters. You know, the air is thinner up there. It can handle salt, mist, chemical, active substances. You know, this is, a lot of people would think of this as conformally coated. So you can see all of those different regulations that the extreme version makes. Okay, the Side Plus Extreme. So with that, let's see, last slide here. So this is just one of many products. So we've covered this in the past. We covered the 1200, the 1500. This is the ET200 SP. We will be covering the AL and the EcoPN. I think these are both EcoPN in the future. But with that, I want to actually give you a physical demo of how this stuff works. So in any case, let me move the modules around here a little bit, and we'll be zooming in and out. So this is the unit I wired up this weekend, and we'll zoom in on her. And this is the one that gives you the up to 3 Ethernet ports. So you have 2 bus adapters. Okay. And it's a little bit wider. If you look at one of the other ones, you can see it's a lot narrower, right? That's actually the multi-field bus model, which is about the same size as the standard model. Well, while I'm here, I might as well bring that one in too and show you that one. Okay. So in any case, but let's focus on this guy and we'll take a look at, I wanted to show you this one because this one also has the analog in, even though I haven't put the analog operators and make gauges on the panel. I do have them wired up. Right now I just have them wired to each other. But in any case, let's go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit. Okay, first thing you're going to notice is the first terminal block here, the first base is a light style, and then they go to the darker style. And that's because you can bring power into these light bases, right? Like an A0. And I go through all the part numbers in my course. You guys can find that in the literature. And it passes power to these other bases. Okay, so you'll typically start with a light style. You'll go through as many bases as you can power until you need another, or you need isolation, until you need another light style base. And then here you can see the modules themselves. I love the fact that everything has a QR code on it. So if you need the manual, you just get your phone out and it'll link you right to it. But I wanted to wire in here. So I was able to wire everything based on just the little label here. And again, this is where you can slide in your own labels if you want. And then the indicators here, they all worked when we actually do in a next video, we actually do the integration. You'll see these lights come on and they're very easy to see. You can also see here some version information. I did run into some of these modules being too new for version 16. So I usually default to version 16 because that's what I started with. But if you have 16.1, you can get the new GSD file, and it supports most of I think almost all the new modules. In any case, up here, now I do have a mix of new and used because back when I was getting ready to do this, we had the whole component shortage, so I had to pick up some modules myself. But in any case, you'll see the type here, digital in, and this is a basic, okay? So 8 by 24, 8 inputs at 24 volts DC. And then you have the digital output, DQ. This is a standard 8 by 24. 8U, I believe that means voltage, and U for voltage. But in any case, and then if we come over here, we have an AQ. This is a standard ST, and this is for UI, so voltage or current. And so you can see those there. And down here is the article number, which we typically refer to as like a catalog number here in the US. Okay. And so when I'm setting these up, I take a picture of the front of the unit, and that's what I use to set them up in the software. But in any case, you can also see the versions here as well. I love that all that information is on the front of the module. And then at the top, we already looked at that. And so we already looked at the top. And then over here, we have the server module, or what we may call an end cap here in the US. All right. So one of the cool things about these modules is the keying. So I'm going to take these out just by squeezing in. I'm going to pull it out. Pull this one out too. Okay. And in there, you can see, I know the lighting's a little tricky, but in there, you see those black little wheels, those circular black things, those are the keys. And you can see how they're, let's see if I go up to the camera. If I put the overhead light on, it just gives too much glare. So hopefully you guys can see that. Well, the cool thing about that is that those come pre-installed on the modules. Like they're clipped in there really good. And they don't come loose until you stick them in all the way, and then they stay in the base. And I love that. So you don't have to turn anything. You don't have to memorize what position it's in. You just put the module in and boom. Now, I did have a couple modules put in the wrong position, so I was able to get out with a screwdriver, get in that little notch there and get it out. But you can see there's 2 notches in each. But it doesn't feel like when I was doing that, it didn't feel like it was designed for those to be reused. So I'd probably say that not. But let's go ahead and try to put this module in the wrong place. Yeah, you can. So I really like that design feature, automatic keying. And yeah, that's great. And they really go in. You're going to make sure they're all the way in, but once they're in, they're in. Now, let me zoom out a little bit and show you how to take them apart and put them back together. So there are these push-in buttons here on the top, right? So these latches, these releases. And so what I'll do is let me push in the first two, the server module and the module, and I'm going to slide them to the right, okay? And I know it has all the wiring on it, but in any case, that's how easy it is to assemble and disassemble. Click, or disassemble like this, okay? And now to get them on and off the DIN rail, I'm going to push in those 2 tabs at the top there. I'm going to lift the bottom up. Okay, now I can get it off the DIN rail. All right. And so when you're pushing in that top tab, it's doing two things. Okay. It's going to release the DIN rail, but it's also going to release the connection to the module on the side of it. All right. And so you're going to be cognizant of that. All right. You can't just release the module off the DIN rail. You have to release it from the side as well. Okay. And you can see that here. Well, let's see if we can get him off. He's a little sticky. I don't know why. He could be used. But in any case, get him off. Okay. And it's the same for this guy too. Let's see here. So let's go ahead and put it back together. Again, we'll put the top on first, and then we'll click it on to the bottom. Okay. And then we'll slide it in. Nice. Then we'll do the same thing for the server module end cap. Okay. It's not called end cap. That's my race. Okay. And this one sometimes, this might be a used one. There we go. It's all in together and working great. You got to make sure you get those modules all the way in. Okay. And there's a lot of great diagnostics when you get the system up and running. It'll tell you if it's missing a module. It'll tell you if you chose the wrong base in the software. If let's say you chose the light colored base versus the dark colored base, I mean the new power versus the power pass on. It'll tell you if you got the wrong firmware or the wrong style. Maybe you chose a standard and it's a basic. So you get all that kind of stuff that you would normally get when you're, to make sure you have the right I/O modules. And so with that, that is a look at ET200SP. I hope it makes sense to you now. Now, if you've been using this for a long time, longer than I have, and you have some more tips, please leave them in the comments. I do appreciate everybody who comments on the videos, wherever the video is. Also, we do have more content coming out about this. We're going to go through each of these in a separate video and get each of these up and running from scratch. And then after that, there will be new lessons at the Automation School for anybody who's interested in maybe a longer version of this with more details and support, right? So in any case, and of course, if you guys want to call me and have a group of your guys come in and do some hands-on training, these are actually ready to be used in the training room with all the S7 1200s and 1500s. So if you want to do some hands-on training, it's we're very unique here because of having the automation show and podcast and blog and all the vendors we work with. We have a lot of equipment that you will find almost in nobody else's training rooms. So with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to wish you all good health and happiness. And until next time, my friends, peace.